Hello, guys. Welcome to the 17th edition of the Strongman Winners Circle podcast with my co-host, Anthony Furman. And today we have our special guest of Zack McCarley, an OG legend. For you guys that don't know Zack, he was a national champion at 105 kilo back in 2010. He won America's Strongest Man 3 years in a row from 2011 to 2013. He was World's Strongest Man 90 kilo in 2015. Wrestling All-American in 2015 as well. He has a chemistry and he's a master's in chemistry. He's the OG legend. He is Zack McCarley. Zack, welcome.
Thanks for having me, guys.
And I just want to hop in on here and say hello, everyone. Co-host Anthony Furman here. You might be listening to this on Spotify or Apple now, which is very new. So we just recently, Nicholas here, worked really hard to get all that to you. So thank you, everyone, for listening on these new mediums. And if you're not, go to Spotify or Apple and subscribe to us.
That is true.
Big announcement. Sorry, that was a big deal. I had to get it in there. Anyway, Zack, I don't want to take away from your thunder here. So most people, it's 2020, right? So you've been a long, illustrious history in the sport, but you've been out for a few years, and I know you're making a comeback with a lot of your educational assets, aka your mind, right? That's what you're trying to help with. Mm-hmm. Now, people most recently know you from the Record Breakers, Clash Record Breakers on ESPN. Now, I know, for example, I did not expect you to Zercher that axle. So let's start with what the people know. Let's talk about that, and then we're going to go back a little bit and kind of reintroduce you to everyone.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, yeah, let's start there, I suppose. Well, I guess you want to know why I did it that way, or why
that's my main question. I know Nicholas, the current Axel world record holder, has some questions, but I really want to know because that blew my mind. I did not expect it.
Yeah, my main justification for doing that was I ruptured my bicep last July, which, at this time of recording was that 10 months ago, something of that nature. And I was really concerned to re-damage it. And so that was a technique that I came up with probably 2 or 3 weeks after I ruptured my bicep originally. And I decided that I would no longer utilize the mid-air switch from mixed grip to double overhand, which is something that I feel like I was the first very popular person to use that and the first person to kind of popularize that move. At the time, people were bringing it to their stomach with a mixed grip. And then once it was contacting the torso, they would switch the hand swiftly. Yep. But I just switched it in the air. And that was actually taken from Robbie Walden, who was another even lighter guy with a arguably more impressive axle clean and press than I ever had. I believe he was an 80 kilo guy, and I think he got up into the 330s.
Wow, that's impressive.
Like 330s or 340s. And he was just a local guy to the Northwest. But I was exposed to so many excellent lifters that I just shut up and listened, and I took what I could, and I'm just a product of my environment, just like anyone. And I really feel that strongly. So people like Grant Higa and Pete Markov and all those guys in the Northwest, amazing training partners, Tyler, and those are the people that made me, my family, my friends. So. But the Zercher, it was new. I honestly wasn't a fan of it.
I wonder why.
I wasn't a fan of it, but I do, in training I had cleaned 425 several times, and I knew that it was possible, but you got to put it together on the day of, and I just. Flat out.
So I saw you in the warm-ups on the other axle. You hit very easy, close to what your opener was. It was really smooth. And I think that's a testament to that specific axle we use for this world record is probably one of the toughest implements out there.
It's definitely, it speaks very highly to Canby lifting, 417 on that axle. Like it's
seventh event of the weekend. He did that too.
Yeah. That I've lifted on a lot of axles. Okay. and damn, that is the hardest axle I have ever lifted, period. Like it felt great. Yeah, it felt great. The funny part was it's so stable that when it came off the ground, it felt lighter than usual, but then when I went to transition, it was just like terrible. And there were a couple of complicating factors as far as me, but I think if I could go back and do it again, I would probably just try to double overhand straight to the torso to get the inertia kind of spinning up my torso.
Yeah.
But again, you know, I stuck with the technique that I was planning on, and
that's what you have to do. I mean, I don't think anyone faults you for that.
So I've been following the kind of like your YouTube and your training. We met originally back in Denison 2013. So I knew you already had like a big Zercher. So I thought it made sense to go. I think you Zercher in the mid 500s for reps, right? Out of a rack. So I thought it would be like that would be like kind of cake in terms of getting that Zercher up and then kind of being able to reposition. So the quick question I have, when you originally kind of tore your bicep, did it tear on the flip back? So you started with a reverse grip, went to mix it, and then did it tear then, or was it what was like the final blow last year?
So I actually I was doing an axle clean and press at 365, and I passed the hip, and I just came a little bit too high, and I think I just kind of I curled my arm wrong when I passed through the hips, and I stuck with the pull a little bit too long before transitioning my hand. And when I passed, I would say, when I passed about my belt line, I definitely felt it just like completely go. It felt like 3 piano strings snapping in my arm, and then it felt like Velcro. It sounded like Velcro in my ear, and then when it completely came off, it sounded like cellophane stretching.
Oh.
And it was really interesting because like I've never had an injury like that. I've had some like gruesome injuries, but not like that. And it happened, and I like put it down, and I have a video. I'm not sure if I think I posted it, but I like the owner of the gym, Taylor Clark over at Ellensburg CrossFit. He was like sitting there watching, or he was standing there watching, and I walked over and I was like, "Hey man, I think I tore my bicep." And he's like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, that sucks."
Everyone's reaction to bicep tears is so different. I've noticed. Like mine, I did mine on a pull up, and mine was twigs. It sounded like twig snapping to me. And mine was like pretty painful, but like I kept trying to use it. Like I wouldn't accept. I did that. I finished the rest of the training session. Like I refused to accept that it was torn. I kept trying. I was about to go for a world record block press, so I was like pretty focused. And then I've seen people where it tears and they cripple with pain. So it's like I don't know. Bicep tears are so random. It seems like there's no real rhyme or reason to them.
To interject in this story, Johnny Waz called you. I was like, "That's stuff." He's like, "That's definitely torn." You're like, "No." Johnny did. Johnny has like half bicep, so you might have seen a bicep.
I explained what it was, and Johnny's like, "It's torn." I was like, "Nah, it's not torn, Johnny." I was like, "Fuck you."
But a quick, since we're of course all about education as well, a quick bit about if you have bicep tear or not. Mike O'Connor kind of told me this, especially when he went through his bicep tear last year, is doing a hook test. So almost like bending the arm, and when you bend the arm, you get into the kind of the crease of your elbow, and
right in there and dig it, and you can grab the tendon actually. Like if it's there, you can feel it.
So you'll know if you really torn your bicep, because I've had some kind of close calls, and it's really more my brachialis in my forearm. But first thing I thought, I was like, oh, was it actually my bicep?
It's my time finally.
Still waiting, knock on wood. But yeah, my back is fun enough. But
yeah, I was gonna mention actually. I tell a lot of people about that hook test, because that's the exact thing that I was instructed to do when I called up my old chiropractor, Dr. Bridgman, and I was like, "Hey man, I think I tore my bicep. Like, take a look at this." Like, Zoom called him or whatever it was at the time. I think it was on Messenger, and he's like, "That looks torn." He's like, "Okay, let's do a hook test. Like, do your good arm first." And he's like, bend your arm at 90 degrees, and then dig your thumb underneath the the medial portion of the elbow, and then lift and feel that bicep tendon. And he's like, "You feel it?" I'm like, "Yeah, I feel it." And then he's like, "Okay, do your left arm," which is the one that was torn. And I was like, it was the weirdest thing. So just feeling for it, and it's just like mush. It's
crazy how the difference. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, I don't feel anything in there.
My biceps like my soul. There's nothing left.
Yeah, it's gone. The
You said-
darkest of voids.
But for the most part, you've throughout your career, you stayed pretty injury free from any major surgery.
Yeah, that was my first surgery. I've had a lot
That's
of soft
impressive.
tissue. Yeah, I've had a lot of soft tissue injuries. You know, like it's ones I still truthfully suffer to this day. In high school wrestling, I like destroyed my left ankle, and it still gives my left knee and left hip problems because it's never been perfectly right, but I've always managed with it. And then in 2012, I really damaged some connective tissue and my dorsal sacral ligament, which is what holds your sacrum in place, at the Arnold, and had to withdraw from that contest. That one was like, it really changed my mentality on strongman. At that time, I don't know if I'm jumping into this too soon, but like,
No,
it's perfect.
free flowing.
okay, sweet. Yeah, at that time I was like super hardcore. I was like, I will die for this. You know, like I was like, this
We
is
were all
the
there
only
at some
thing
point.
that
Yeah.
matters to me. Yeah, and after that, it was kind of like, well, man, like I want to, you know, eventually I want to have kids, and like, man, I would be really upset if I could not play with them. You know, I would be really upset if I couldn't wrestle with them. Like, wrestling's been a passion of my life as well, and there's a lot of things that I enjoy doing, but just like being so laid up for such a long time in such a terrible way, it was very eye-opening for me. That was the worst injury of my life for sure, and it's still my L3 L4 junction is still a little bit feeble, and I work with it, you know what I mean, but as we all have to, because you only get one body, but it's something that like really was troubling for me for a while.
Wow, interesting. But we should get to the top. So
Let's do a little
the-
rewind here back to Zack
the,
McCarley.
the origin story. So
Origins.
yeah. So tell us when you started strongman and like how you got into it, like who got you into the sport.
Oh man, okay, this is a wild story.
All right, man. There's a 20 name limit name drop for this.
Oh dude, okay, well, I'm gonna have to get out a piece of paper and like start ranking.
Prioritize.
Yeah, because okay, so how did I get into strongman? It was so I actually wrestled on scholarship for 1 year after high school, and the summer after high school, I was, you know, I just got done with the workout. I was sitting on the couch, you know, eating Cheetos or whatever the hell I was doing, and I was flipping through the channels, and I saw like on ESPN there was strongman. I was like, man, this is really cool. And I was watching them do the log press, and I remember it was like Marius and like a bunch of those guys in that era, like about 06, and I was like, man, you know, that's not a lot more than I do, you know, like they're starting with a 240 log, like I can overhead 240, and they went up to like 360 or something like that, and I was like, which is, I mean, the whole nother topic. I mean, man, strongman in that era was like comparatively so light, but I was looking.
We're finishing our log medley for the regionals at 360 for the 105s this year.
Right? Yeah.
That's nuts.
Exactly. And the medley starts heavier than the World's Strongest Man medley was at that time.
Crazy. Wow.
So I was watching, I was like, man, I could do that. And like next event came up, and they're like doing a 700-pound yoke, and I'm like, man, I could do that too. Like, and like stones came up, and I'm like, you know, in the wrestling room, I always wrestle with heavyweights, so I was picking up 275-pound guys, and like at the time there were only two or three stones that were heavier than that, and they're stones, not humans. And humans are like really wriggly, like they don't like to get picked up. and like instead, the third event came on, and instead of saying like I could do that, I was like, why don't I do that? I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do it. And so not to date myself.
So what year is this?
06.
06, all right.
And so not to date myself too much, like I didn't even have a car at the time. So I rode my bicycle to the local public library to access the dial-up internet. And And I hopped on the internet, like started looking about like things for strongman, like strongman contests and blah, blah, and like a strongman contest in Washington State and all these things. And North American Strongman came up, and I started looking through their contest list, and there were 2 events in the next year that were on the West Coast period. One of them was in California. The other one was Corvallis, Oregon. And I lived a good like 7 hours away, 6 or 7 hours away from Corvallis, Oregon. And I was like, you know what, I can do that. And I looked up the entry thing, and you know, Grant Higa is a promoter, and I'm like, okay, cool, Grant Higa. Like, I'm gonna call this guy, and I called him. I'm like, hey, my name's Zach. I'm 18. I'm curious in your contest, and I wanted to come out and compete. I just wanted to see what I needed to do to come out and compete. So, you know, I live in Maple Valley, Washington, blah, 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 like ran it down a little bit for him. And then I was like, my number is this, please give me a call back. I appreciate your time. Thank you. And he called me back the next day, and he says, big Hawaiian. He's like, bro, did you say you live in Maple Valley, Washington? And I'm like, yeah, that's where I live. He's like,
good grant. That's a good grant.
Like, bro, that's where I live. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah. And he lived like a mile and a half away from me. And so that was like some kind of strange divine intervention, because he was like, I was going to show up. I was just going to show up. I didn't, you know, that's kind of how I am. And when I want to do something, I'm like, I'm just going to do it. Like, both feet in the deep end, go.
Yep.
And he's like, you should come out and train. And I'm like, are you sure? He's like, yeah. He's like, yeah, do it. And I'm like, okay. So like, he told me this place to go to, and like, you know, it was this, we were training in a warehouse. Like, he was great friends with this this guy that was managing a warehouse, and his name was Marv. But they stored the equipment at the warehouse, and then on Saturday mornings before the shift change, we could train. So we started training at 6 a.m. on Saturdays, and we had to be out by like 8 or 9. And so, you know, he's like, we're going to meet up at this place, you know, in the middle of an industrial district in Renton, Washington, which is one of the largest industrial districts in the United States. It's like the middle of nowhere, only sodium lights, no residential, no human beings around there on a Saturday morning at 6 a.m. So I drove out there. I was 15 minutes early. There is no one, and it's dark, and there's just like a buzzing sodium light. And then there's just like a huge chain of cars that drives up. And I'm like, oh man, there's like a caravan of people, and they all drove up, and they all hop out, and they're all carrying bags, and it's dark, and it's, you know, I'm like, okay, like these must be the guys. So I hopped out, and I went up, and I'm like, you know, I went up to the front, and I was like, hey, I'm here for the lifting. And the people at the front were like, what are you talking about? And then like Marv strolled by, and I was like, hey, I'm here for the strongman stuff, with lifting stuff. And he's like, oh yeah, just like go straight out there, you'll see him. And I like walked back there, and something I failed to mention at this point was like, I always have food on me, and I always had food on me, because like I think wrestling gave me some kind of like disorder.
Probably, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. But I had like a dozen cooked eggs and like half a loaf of bread, and like I had this food with me because I was like, I don't know how long we're gonna be here, and I gotta eat. And so I'm like carrying my training bag and the food, and I walk back there, and they're like, you know, they're all just warming up. They're like, what the hell is this kid doing? You know?
Yeah, you're 18, just kind of like walking into a random industrial complex.
Yeah. And you know, showed up, started introducing myself, and you know, I hadn't met Grant Higa yet. You know what I mean? He showed up a little bit later. So I'm like introducing myself, and these people are like, who the hell is this person? Like, none of them knew that I was coming. So I'm just some random dude with a plate of eggs and a bunch of bread. And yeah, so I introduced myself. You know, we get along great. It was pretty awesome. My first training day like showed a ton of potential. I did like a 500 or 600 pound Zercher, Conan's wheel.
I was gonna say, it's your first time 18 just lifting. Here's 600 pounds Zercher.
I loaded a 330 stone. My pressing was trash. I could barely do a 190 log for one, and it was ugly.
Man, when I was 18, I could barely bench 170.
Yeah, my farmers was always really good. I did a 274 on 1.5 inch handles that were somewhat slick for like 40 feet. But I showed a lot of potential, and I think that that was one of the factors, but another factor was just so many amazing people in that room that were
Yeah.
willing to take me under their wing. There was Grant Higa, who's, you know who Grant Higa is, but for the people that don't, like, you guys introduced me as an OG. He is an OG to me.
Yeah.
So he's like an OG's OG. Like, and he's he's an extremely kind guy and totally took me under his wing, totally mentored me. People like Pete Markov, same thing. He's an OG's OG. Like, he taught me how to load stones. He taught Josh Hatfield how to load stones. He taught Andrew Palmer how to load stones. It's funny, the people he teaches how to load stones.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm a theme here.
Good.
Yeah, they're always like super good at loading stones.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and there was a national champion in the room, Scott. I want to say his name was Scott Hughes. It's been so long since I thought of some of the people. And Steve Spellman was a really good lightweight as well.
Your recollection is pretty good, though. I'll give you some credit, man. You remember
Yeah.
what farmer's weight you used.
Yeah. I remember. I mean, yeah, I remember very well. And yeah, they were 94-pound handles, and I had 2 plates on each side, and it was 274 hand. And I remember really well.
Also, for all our teenage listeners, just real quick, in 2006, yes, you could find a guy's number on the internet and call them, and it'd be okay. Now, in 2022, I don't want any of you looking people's phone numbers up and calling them and meeting them at an industrial warehouse at 6 a.m. We don't do that anymore. Just want to make it clear out there for everyone.
Not advised.
So of course this is all in 2016. So how long did you wait until
2006?
2006. When did you hop into your first contest? How long did
less
you?
than a month later.
Cool.
Yeah, I got 1 training session in, and they're like, I was like, okay, let's go. Because I wasn't even going to train. I was just going to show up to the contest, and like, I didn't have any expectation of being able to try these events before I did them. So
yeah,
I was like, I'm just going to do it. So 1 training session, went there. It's so funny. Like, I roomed with Pete Markov, and we just like hung out and ate a bunch of food the night before. It should be noted that at the time, events were less common. It was a pro-am system. Which people that have been in the sport long enough, they know that it was pro-am, and then it went to a pro card system, and then it went back to like a weird pro-am, and then the weight classes shifted, and then there was like platinum plus in there somewhere. There's been a couple iterations of the structure.
And he's talking about Strongman Core or national. It was national. It was NAS back then, North American Strongman and Strongman Core. That was their systems.
Totally, yeah. And what I didn't know, and what I wouldn't have cared about anyway, was this was one of the nation's highest level shows. And I was just walking into a bloodbath. I showed up, and the next lightest person was about 70 pounds heavier than me. And, this was considered a very heavy show at the time, which things changed by today's standards. Like, I would have murdered this thing. But I remember showing up and being like, so like, where's weigh-ins? Like, what's going on? And they're like, no weigh-ins. This is the heavyweight pro-am. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, people fly in from all over the nation to compete in this contest. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, where are they? And they're like, huge. And I'm like, oh shit. I'm like an 18-year-old that's like 200 pounds, lean and strong, but like not comparable. And so I compete, and I take 11th out of 13, which is pretty good in my opinion.
Yeah.
Given the circumstances. But I think it was pretty important that just a sec, I'm getting an audio thing. Google. Hey Google. Stop.
Hey Google, fuck off. Quit listening to me.
Damn, bro.
Leave me alone.
So yeah. So 11th out of 13, not bad. But I think that it was necessary for me to select a show that was going to kick my ass, because I don't like getting my ass kicked.
Yeah.
And it like, I definitely have that gritty characteristic of, if I'm great at something to begin with, then I just have a little bit less drive for some reason. Like, one of the reasons that I stuck with wrestling was I remember my junior year in high school, I wrestled someone who went on to be a 2-time state champion, 4-time finalist.
Wow.
And he just kicked my ass every day, just every day. And it made me want to be so much better, you know. And I think that the same thing happened with Strongman. If I would have came in and just murdered it, then I would have been like, cool, this isn't that hard. Okay, like next thing, like I enjoy challenge.
So the point you brought up, you said when you got there, you thought it was like a small contest. You get there, and then all of a sudden you hear people are flying in from across the country to compete with you, and so that resonated with me because I think everybody when they first begin sport, they experience that right there when they get to that level. For me, it was actually MMA. I had a fight scheduled way back. I was 19 years old, I think. And I got to the venue, and they're like, "Hey, this guy flew all the way from San Diego to fucking Tennessee to fight." And I was like, "Oh." I was like, "Go away!" He flew across the country to fight me. I was like, "Uh-oh!" And I got inside my own head. It scared the shit out of me because I knew I wouldn't do that. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't confident in my skills yet to fly somewhere. So I was like, "Oh, they brought in a ringer." He did whip my ass a little bit, but you know. So that just resonated with me. That's almost awe when you're at the stage and you're like, "Wow, this is high level. People are flying here for this. It's a big deal."
So how did you follow up that show after that?
Well, I went straight into a season of college wrestling. Got a couple smaller back injuries, went to the NJCAA Nationals. And it was my showing at Nationals was trash. Actually, I was really rather upset with it because in the finals of the region, I lost by 1 point to the person who went on to be the national champion. And I knew like I messed up is the only reason that happened. And then I went to nationals and just like 0-2, just out immediately. I was so disappointed in myself. But that being said, like, you know, I went through a full season. I battled a couple smaller injuries, and truthfully, there were a lot of realizations for me because wrestling in high school was a family, and it was, you know, like my family structure has always been not the ideal one, but it's the one that I've been given, and that's, you know,
can't choose your family.
Yeah. And I love my family, but there were a lot of things that wrestling fulfilled in me that I really needed as a human being that I didn't have. And so it was very much like a family atmosphere in high school.
You guys keep saying family. Vin Diesel's got to come into this podcast.
Yeah, we said it way too much already. We don't need that smoke.
Yeah. And but that to say that like
Vin Diesel. I'm sorry.
Man, I'm gonna shave my head here and I'll come back as Vin Diesel. It'll be great.
Did somebody say you talk about family? Toretto loves family.
Yeah. So anyway, when you get to college wrestling, you find out that it's much more like a business. And it's like you're there to win, period. You know, and if you're not winning, then they want to like get rid of you.
That's most college sports. It goes quickly from high school to business.
Yeah, and I wasn't ready for that. Nobody told me it would be that way, and I had to learn that for myself. And I became very bitter towards my coach. That's why I only wrestled for one season, because by the end of it, I was just there were a lot of terrible things that he did. Like one of our wrestlers got down, or like he'd get down by like 3 points, and he'd be on bottom, and he'd be like, stand up. And he'd be like, block the handout. And then he would literally just get frustrated, like kick a leg up, reach over to his bag, pull out a book and start reading a book and like stop coaching. Like he was like, I fucking hated him. And you know, the people that know me know that I don't say that often, but God, I hated that guy. So
I hate him too now.
I couldn't continue to be in the same room as him. And so I you know, one season of college wrestling, came back, started training some strongman because I really enjoyed that. Did one smaller contest, I did Fresno in 2007. Had a really good showing. I was the only teen in the lightweight division. I placed upper middle pack in another pro-am. There were pros there, and I was competing against them, and a bunch of guys from Arizona at the time. And Dion was there, and she was really impressed, and she was like, wait, you're only 19? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, well, I'm gonna give you an invitation to nationals, teen nationals. And I was like, okay. You know, like I just met this person. Okay, cool. And flying out, I was talking to Grant Higa about it because he was there, and Grant was like, "Bro, you got to do the team nationals." And funny enough, I might be mixing up where I was, but I remember it was also Brian Shaw that was convincing me at the time. It was Brian Shaw and Grant Higa that were both like, "Dude, you got to do team nationals." And I was like, "Okay."
Now you gotta do Brian Shaw's impression, how he told you.
I can't even remember it, honestly. I can't.
I see what you're doing here.
Yeah, but
I'm super excited. I'm super excited.
No, you're not. You're not gonna. Nope, I'm not doing mine. It's inappropriate.
But they basically both convinced me to do team nationals. I was like,
Wow.
okay, I'll do it. And I did a tune-up contest before that, which was the week before. Won that contest. Went to team nationals. I competed. I actually weighed in under 200, and they were like, "Cool, you're doing lightweight team nationals." And I said, "No, I want to do heavyweight." And they're like, "Well, you're like 198 pounds." And I was like, "Okay, can I reweigh in?" And they're like, "Yeah." And so I grabbed like a gallon of water and weighed in on the scale with a gallon of water, put me over 200. He's like, "Okay, cool, you're a heavyweight." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And I went and competed, and there were a couple of really strong people there, but I wound up winning that. And that was the moment that I was like, "Oh, I could be really good at this,"
And there it is, listeners of Winner Circle podcast. There's that moment we talk about all the time. There's always that moment where you believe in
Realize your
yourself.
potential.
You realize your potential. And for him, it was very early.
That was three contests in.
Yeah.
Impressive. Very impressive.
Oh, no, 4. It was 4 technically.
All right.
So I mean, you're within your first year and a half in the sport. That's pretty incredible, actually.
Yeah, first calendar year.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. It was like that calendar year also had, 6 or 8 months of wrestling in it. So.
But let's fast forward to your first pro show. It probably would have been in 2011, maybe ASM. Who were the guys you were competing with back then? I imagine probably like Johnny and Aaron West, Justin Blake. That's the ones I remember, but you go ahead.
Great memory. Yeah. Justin Blake was the guy to beat. He was, I'm pretty sure, the 2-time returning champion. At the time, nobody had won 3, like, ever. And I was like, I want to be the first person to do that. But I showed up, and I was, the guys were super cool, but it was like, damn, these guys are strong.
Yeah, that's a big jump from amateur to the ASM. Your first time, that jump, it's humbling.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, like, I think the year that really shaped me, I mean, like, we have to go back a little bit for the year that shaped me. It was 09 to 10, and I went to nationals in 09, and it was in Lafayette, Louisiana, and I was doing good in the contest, and I wound up taking second by 1 or 2 points, if my memory serves me right, to Doug Madewell. And I was so upset. I was emotionally destroyed and distraught after that. And it made me train so hard the next year that I kind of knew that I was unstoppable. I was like, that was when I started to develop that mentality, I think, of like, I'll die before I, don't get what I want out of it.
Fuck, you're motivating me right now, Zach. Hold on, let me go train.
And so in 2010, that's when you and I shared this in common, and we shared this story in person. But like, that's when I showed up in the full suit. Like I did all of my travel in a full suit, and like when people would ask me, I was like, "This is a business trip.
Hey, man,
like I'm just coming here to do business. Like, we're going to nationals, but this is the Zack McCarley show. People are competing for second."
I love it. I love it. We talked about that in person. I did the same thing. It's my first world jam. I dressed real nice. Everyone's in their sweats, sucking, and I'm just walking in there like I own the place. It's a mind fuck.
Yeah, and but that year shaped me, and then it carried through for the rest of my career, honestly. Because fast forward 2010, fast forward to 2011, it was the same mentality for me, honestly. Like, I showed up, and I was just like, I want it more than these people. I worked harder than these people. I've sacrificed more than these people. These people do not deserve this. I'm the only one here that deserves this, and I'm going to get it.
All right, man. I said it a little bit ago, but you got to chill because I'm getting motivated right now. It's been a while since I've been motivated. I'm gonna call you every day. I'm gonna decide to come back and compete. Just you'll be my hype man every day, Zach. Tell me a story, Zach. Tell me how to feel.
Yeah, I gotta get out to nationals. I'll be the hype man in the corner. You know.
Yeah. You don't want to go to national. It's in my hometown, Erie, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Or you can come to New Hampshire for USS Nationals and tell all 600 competitors your story, so they can.
Yeah, get on the mic and just tell the story the whole time they're competing.
Yeah, well, I could just keep talking. There's so many stories.
Yeah. So of course, you had that big win in 2011, of course, 2012, 2013. So you went in a slew of wins. So get to that 3 ASM wins, which is the most wins at the time. Talk us through what were the differences and the similarities in the wins? Like, what was your mentality going into? Like, you talked a little bit about your mentality, but if you can kind of really talk about what the perseverance was to win those titles.
Yeah, I really just wanted 3. My heart was set on that number, and I thought that, like, as soon as I won the first one, I always focus on the next step. I don't usually focus on like, oh, like what's the next step after that one, and like 5 steps ahead and 10 steps ahead. I'm usually like next step.
Yeah.
Kind of probably comes from wrestling, which is like, you go to league, you wrestle to get to regionals. You go to regionals, you wrestle to get to state. You go to state, the only name of the game is advance.
Yeah.
Match at a time. And so I think that really shaped my mentality for it. And it's the same thing. For me, it was like the next contest. And when it comes to contests, for me, it's always the next event. Like, it's just the next event.
Oh, yeah.
With a little bit of exceptions. Like if there's a heavy deadlift for repetitions, I'm going to save a little bit for like the stones at the end, if there's stones, blah, blah, blah. And my mentality for the first one, I explained that. My mentality for the second ASM win was really like, okay, like you got to win. Cool. Other people have done that to this point, but nobody's won 2 in a row. At least it's possible Justin Blake did, but I thought someone won between his 2 wins. And to me, it was like, this is a prove it. Like anybody can get a fluke, prove it. And so I went there and I was like, I have to prove this. And I won again.
I really quickly, because I had Sean one time on the podcast. Dave Mahalev won in 2009. Justin Blake won 2008 and 2010.
Yeah, see, I thought that there was one year where it was separated. Yeah. And so I think that was my motivating factor at the time, was like, nobody's won back-to-back to this point.
Man, I tell you, I'm just going to interject and fangirl real quick. This is so cool for me. I'm sure a lot of people listening. So to me, this 2010, 2011 to like 2017, 2018, I would say 2017, basically till before I got in the sport, to me, that's like the golden era of 105, like ASM, like that span from like 11 to 16, I would say. For me personally, that's like, when I look back at it, you hear like golden age of pirates, golden age of like comics. It's the same thing to me. That's what I look at it as. So I'm fangirling a little bit still. Sorry. Anyways, continue.
You always flatter me. Flattery will get you everywhere, Anthony. At least with me. And so at that point, nobody had won 2 in a row. And to me, it was a prove it situation. It was a like, you won your pro card, you won pro nationals the first time you showed up. Now really prove it. Like, everybody at this level is really good. It's about consistency. It's a smaller field. A single small mistake doesn't punish you as much as a larger field at an amateur nationals. Mm-hmm. You just have to be good. And so, last time, make sure that you prove that this wasn't a fluke. Prove it. And so that was my mentality going into that one. And then the third one was just like show up. And I honestly just felt like I was ready. I felt like I was just like, I'm going to put an exclamation mark on this. Nobody's even gone this far, but I'm going to just kill this thing. And that's kind of what I did. Like, yeah. I showed up, I got the 3-peat. Like, I was the first person to ever 3-peat. And did Sean 3-peat after me?
Sean went 2014, 2015, 2016, got hurt 2017, and then got 2018. So he did 3-peat. But he says in his in podcast, he went for 4. His number in his head was for 4 because you got 3. So
Yeah,
you drove him to 4.
You did this to Sean.
Well, he always pushed me. I mean, like, so it's funny, like Anthony and I have talked about this, but it's really funny how the sport just builds on itself, because there is like a spot in my mind. 2 people actually, my old training partner, Tyler Scott, like really, really pushed me. He and I pushed each other to such extremes. It was incredible. I mean, we would, and it was always skill work too. We would do yokes at like 700 pounds, but we would be running 110, 115 feet and like, like 12 seconds. Like, and it would be like, we'd be timing it and be like, I got 13.1. And then like, oh, next week, like, oh, I got 12.9. Like, and we would just be so competitive. And I think it's the same thing at the pro level with those guys. Is like, I looked at Justin Blake, and professionally, he was the person that I was like comparing myself to.
Yeah.
And then Sean DeMarinis, like, I'm the person he was comparing himself to. And it always builds on itself. But like, Sean definitely pushed me really hard. Like, it should be said that from a consistency standpoint, he is probably the most decorated lightweight, and not like, but also the most ASM wins. But like, I want to say he took second 2 times.
I think he was a 2-time finalist before he.
Yeah. Which means he was in the top 2 for over 5 years, over half a decade in a pro sport.
Mm-hmm. So
very true.
To name other 2-time finalists, you have Anthony Furman, who was also in this podcast, and also Rob Kearney was a 2-time finalist to Sean. So being a 2-time,
I am a 2-time. Damn it.
So those are all. But again, that's good company because they all went on and win other big major titles. So
yeah. I mean, if you could take second, if you could podium ASM, you got a bright future in the sport,
dude. Absolutely. Yeah, it means that you're at the top.
It is.
Honestly, it means, like, to me, that means odds are you need to work on the skill of competition.
Yeah, that's very.
It's not that it's very seldom that you've been outclassed totally. It's that you need to work on the skill of competition.
And that's what happened to me after my first second place to James Deffenbaugh when he took first ASM and it was tiebreaker. I was strong as a gorilla in the jungle, right? Like, it's just strength. That's what I had, and then I had to actually work at the skills to get to that next level. It's very true. It's very true, Nick. Nick can back me up here.
Well, Anthony just the fundamentals was super strong. It just the redefining.
Because I got so good so quick. I didn't really do any like specified skill work. I just kept getting strong and just
But you also didn't like necessarily like peak for certain shows. So like, for instance, Anthony was always really a good setup to like jump into any show.
That's how I modeled. That's how I modeled my training plan.
Yeah, that was his background. But so this is more of a curious question, and now since we've been talking, I've been putting the piece together. So it looked like you of course went back to school, you were wrestling, and you won to become a All-American wrestling, which is not an easy feat. Personally, I know, because I was personally a college wrestler as well. But in the same year that you won your 90 kilo World's Strongest Man title, walk us through that year, when you were wrestling and competing in Strongman.
Oh man, okay. There's just like we're gonna have to do multiple podcasts because I just have too many stories. But this is also a great story. Here we go. Hope you're ready. Break out the popcorn. So in 2014, I walked away from the sport. I was like, I'm going to focus on, it was the time at which I had gone into grad school for chemistry. And I was like, I need to walk away from the sport. Like, I feel like I've accomplished everything that I could have wanted to. I really wanted to get an invitation to the World Championships, but it just never worked out for me. Wait,
you never got an invite? You never got an invite to the World Championship?
Nope.
It's interesting because Sean and Johnny went to the Ukraine in 2013, and that was a Giants Live competition. Yeah. So I wasn't sure if they did a contest that they got recognized, and I don't know if you were at the same one.
It might have been that I might have been injured in that time. Maybe I handed that off, but
more sense.
That might have been what
It's
happened.
probably
there.
because then Sean would have been the next guy, and then Johnny's always available. So he
Yeah.
Johnny
And,
is the definition of gas station ready.
But not to be like these whippersnappers today, like the the availability of international competition now is like so much higher.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, I won several ASMs, and I think that I'm pretty sure that I did get an invitation to that Ukraine contest. I don't know if it was a world championship or not, but that was the only potential world championship that I was invited to in the whole time. And I was a little bit vexed about it. I was definitely upset because I had very clearly stated on several occasions that I wanted to compete for a world championship, and that was the only thing left on my list. And in 2014, I said, this isn't going to pay the bills. It's not going to support a family, and I really want a family. And I am going to walk away from the sport and focus on my professional life, focus on developing a career. And
now,
so
really quick, how old were you when you said that?
What was that? 8. So I guess that's like 8 years after high school.
26.
So 26.
That's very mature of you.
Yeah.
I didn't say that when I was 26.
Yeah.
And I walked away, and it was hard because like the thing that I missed about it so much was the community and the friends.
Yeah.
And because the people that you competed with at the time, and I don't know if it's the same now with the pros, it probably is, but like that's like, it's also kind of like your family. Hey, I'm Vin Diesel, man. I'm the fuzzy Vin Diesel. And
It's kind of like that. It depends on the social media mood of the day.
Yeah. And but yeah, I was a little bit soured that I never got to go to a world championship, but that was really the only thing. And I just like, that was one of the few dreams that I ever really gave up. I gave it up. I said, I'm done. Like, I have to sacrifice this. I walked away, focused on grad school, like a bunch of life shit happened. And then I saw that there's a world championship in Norway. And somebody tagged me this was probably Brandon McDonald. He always tags me. I love that guy.
Yeah.
And
Brandon.
He tagged me in this. I'm pretty sure he was the one that tagged me. And I was like, okay, what did he tag me in this time? Like, I always check. And it's like, you know, Norway World Championships. And I was like, you know, I said something back like, he's like, you should do this. And I was like, yeah, I would, but you know, sport's forgotten me. Like, it's a quick turnover time. And that's fine. I'm okay with that. And the promoter hopped on. He's like, are you interested? And I'm like, in going to a world championship? And he's like, yeah. And it was, I want to say it was 10 weeks out. And I was like, yeah. You're like, yeah. And he's like, okay, you're invited. I'm like, okay, I'll go.
That's awesome. That's what you got to do. You got to take opportunities.
Now, did you do 90 kilos because you were wrestling like 197 at the time? Because
no, so I did. So earlier in that year, I had been wrestling, but after that, I was actually training to be going to weightlifting.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I was training to go into weightlifting because I thought that weightlifting would be a good sport to address my physical weaknesses and imbalances, because I've always had like imbalanced quads. My posterior chain's always been overdeveloped. My like quads have always been slightly underdeveloped, even though I have pretty great looking legs. Like, just my quads have always been kind of weak, and so comparatively, and so that's what I chose to do. And I was getting ready to do 94 kilo. So I was dieting down. I was already at like 210 or whatever. And, you know, I got invited for 105. I was like, yeah. And then like after 2 or 3 weeks of training, I was like, hey, could I do like 90 instead? Because I wasn't sure. Like, honestly, it's a tall order to be like, hey,
yeah,
you have 9 weeks of training from this point. Get ready to like do the thing that you really wanted to do, and you only get one shot at it.
Yeah.
And I was like, can I go 90? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, sweet. So I trained hard, like dieted a little bit. and went there. And then the first day there was a field of 30 for 3 events, and I took first, and first. And then on the events, and then in day 2, which was the finals, the top 10 move on, 10 or 12. There were 5 events, and I took first on the Axel Max, which is a world record at the time. And they wouldn't, there's like small stories about that, but like they wouldn't really let me set it as high as I wanted it. As soon as I broke it, they would only let me take the 180 all the way up to 400. And I was just like, I was close, but I couldn't make that jump. Couldn't make a 40-pound jump and make that lift work at that percentage for me at the time. But so I won the Axel, I won the medley. Like I took first, second, and first in the 5 events. And so I almost took first in every single event. And I was really pleased with that. I wish I could have got first in every event. But honestly, I think that I had my best performance of my entire career, not just at that contest as a whole, but in one of the events, the arm over arm. I think that I literally had a flawless arm over arm truck pull. I like dissected it. I think it's the best performance I've ever had of any event in my entire career. And like watching it, I'm just like, yes, I get fucking pumped every time.
That's awesome.
Because arm over arm truck pull is, of course, you could have all the brute strength, but the timing of the pulls and the rhythm and the drive.
Right here, I could my whole career, I could never figure out how to pull a truck. It was the bane of my existence.
Hey, well, that's okay, because that's like several events.
Yep, I don't gotta do that shit ever again, so screw it.
But that's a very cool story. But
yeah,
moving on, you mentioned a few times that you wrestled. I personally wrestled. Guys like Kevin Ferris, Terry Rady, Tyler Young were all wrestlers in high school and college at one point.
I wrestled high school.
Anthony Furman was a wrestler. Do you think there's a positive correlation between wrestling and being successful in strongman?
I mean, there has to be, right? Like what you just said.
Well, I think it creates enough body dysmorphia and then mental, you hate yourself, and it carries over very well. Like you learn to hate yourself because the coach hate you.
I mean, like there might be a little bit of that, honestly, but I think that the largest part of it for me is the mentality. I definitely, I mean, like when I, going back to that first national competition that I did, which was the teen nationals, I remember I was there with my stepfather, Ray, and he and I always give shit to each other. And he like looked over at like one of the big farm boys who was like 280, and he's like, oh man, like, look at him. He's pretty big, huh? Like that's a big boy over there. You think you're going to take him? And I just like looked at him and I was like, that's all fluff. Like this is the real deal.
Yeah.
Like, and I think that wrestling kind of gave me that kind of like, I don't know if
you were confident.
I don't know if our language is constrained, but the real fuck you fight me mentality. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I mean, it's that kind of alpha mentality that elite athletes have. That's what that is.
I was going to go with more of the mechanics. I always thought, because you're always watching technique, right? So you would watch technique in terms of like doing takedowns on the bottom, on the top, and then you have to replicate that. So if you see that in strongman, you see someone do it, like, can you
Andy, did you like bottom, or are you bottom or top guy?
I was great in all positions, Anthony.
I see.
But the form recognition, and then being able to have mind-body connection. But also, the best wrestlers always had the best hips, right? So if you're able to transfer that hip power into strongman, I think that's where.
That's a good point. Yeah,
it was just being able.
Even football players like linebackers and linemen, it's that quick hip, that hip power he's talking about. That's a good point. Also, I don't want to bring Vin Diesel back into it, but there is something to say that in wrestling, it's an individual sport, but you are surrounded by brotherhood. It's very close to strongman.
Yeah. No, I never even
different weight classes.
Yeah, different weight classes. It is very similar. It's just
cutting weight,
community, and how. Yeah, it's a lot of similarities.
Mm-hmm.
And then, go ahead, Zach.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I feel like I had never considered the technical note, but I definitely know that the mentality and that kind of like not just like the self-confidence, but the attack mentality on the events was something that was beneficial, because like here's a little like here's a little tip for all the people that are listening on from a technical aspect or from a technical aspect of every event. A lot of times people just like wait for the go whistle and then they start lifting. Like you should tension the implement. And when, you're like basically lifting it, and when they say go, that's when you can move. It's not when you can start lifting.
Yeah.
So like, I learned that very quickly. Like I was looking for every corner that I could cut because I was taking it very seriously, and I think that is something that one of the big things about wrestling for me that influenced the way that I competed.
Yep.
I like that.
But yeah, just too many things to list. Like I think yes, wrestling has a positive correlation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Short answer, yes.
All right. Now, have you been in touch with Patrick Castelli? So for you guys that don't know Patrick, he was
The Cannon?
What?
Patrick the Cannon?
Castelli. So he was great friends with Zach, former 80 kilo world champ, Arnold champ, dominated the 80 kilo scene a while before he moved to Australia, took up Olympic lifting and also bobsledding. But he always said that he was going to make a comeback to Strongman once Zach made a comeback to Strongman. So have you been in touch with the Cannon?
Yes. Yeah. He and I have chatted a little bit. I do have to say he's a two-time world champion.
Ooh, two-time.
And I honestly don't know if I'm returning to competition.
I know you are. It's okay.
Yeah, I have to evaluate my physical health. And right now I'm in week 3 of a training cycle, and
you can't be in worse physical health than Bob Schwantz.
Bob Schwantz. Yeah. Again, so like things have changed for Zack McCarley. And
I know. You're a boomer now. I get it.
Yeah. And so we'll see in like 8 weeks how my body feels. But
well, I can tell you that I'm very excited at the possibility. I think it's magnificent for the sport. And I think it's almost like it's almost like a fitting, like you can't write a better narrative. Zack McCarley, disgusted by the sport and lack of opportunities, comes back to fulfill his destiny as a 105 world champion. Like,
right? No, I do agree. It's an amazing narrative, and I would love to compete against Canby because he's very skilled. Like very skilled.
I tell you what, man,
they're very talented. Works hard as hell.
Can't be screwed up by doing so fucking well last year because now he has like 3 people hot on his heels that weren't hot on his heels last year.
Actually, that works me into my next question. So outside of Anthony, outside of myself, who are Zach's top 5 105 kilo athletes in the next 3 years who you maybe seen at Clash or at a competition that's going to do really well? So who are Zach's prospects? And usually as like of course, a great former competitor, you have a good eye or a good scout for talent. So what do you see? What's the scouting report for the future?
Oh man. Okay. I wasn't ready for that question.
Gotcha.
No one's ever ready.
Yeah. I honestly, I hate to give any, this is going to be the most boring answer and I apologize in advance, but like, I hate to give any kind of analysis without adequate research. Like, I don't know. I don't know the field well enough right now. People that were really impressive to me. I mean, all of the
finalists. Yeah, let's go with that. Who was your top 5 most impressive that you saw Clash?
Yeah. I felt that there were a ton of really impressive guys in the finals. I'm not going to remember all the names. What was the guy from? I think he was from Ireland.
Matthew McKeegan, the juggernaut, the Irish juggernaut.
Yeah, McKeegan was very impressive. Cogden. How do you say his name? Cogden?
Just call him the Slice. Mike the Slice.
Cogden, yeah.
Well, Mike is very impressive as well. I think that he has a ton of potential.
Yeah.
I think that he could very well be in the mix for like the very top.
I concur.
Yeah, I feel like maybe he's considered a little bit of a dark horse. I don't know.
At this point, I don't know how, because he's been right. Well, it's because he hasn't got that. He won USS Nationals, but he doesn't have that real that one win yet. You know what I mean? That's what it is.
Or kind of like a major podium, but he's right on the heels of everybody.
He's right there,
and he's even beaten some of the guys that have placed ahead of him. So I think it's only a matter of time with Mr. Cogden.
Yeah, once he gets that consistency nailed down and he can podium at the big shows, then he's going to be in the talk for one of the best in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, Isaac,
Yeah.
right? Like
Right.
that's
Oh, weekend.
the yeah, that he was very impressive on that day.
Yeah, he killed those finals. I don't know who, if anyone could have done better in those finals than Isaac. He did very well.
Yeah, yeah. Loy and Nelson both kind of stood out to me a little bit.
Was
But I
it
also-
Jesse's strict press with the sear dumbbell?
Yeah.
Is that what stood out? Fucking Jesse.
Yeah, I hate things coming off the wrong way, but they seem like if they were polished in the right ways, they could be really good. O'Connor was really solid. I think he needs to put on a little bit of body fat though. Just
Ooh,
Don't tell Mike that.
yeah, bodybuilding background, and he's one of the leanest.
Yeah, one of the leanest people I've ever seen.
Yeah, maybe if only to save, if only to save our egos. like,
Yeah.
like, damn, bro, eat some Ben and Jerry's or some Haagen-Dazs or something.
I got to organize a 105 shirtless volleyball match as an intermission next time. Like that's what we'll shoot to during commercial break.
Yeah. And there, something stood out about Tyler Young as well, but I think that I really liked his personality as well. He seems like a really awesome guy.
I would say he's a hidden gem, but he's loud, so he's not hidden.
Huh?
I would say he's a hidden gem, but he's not quiet, so he's not hidden.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
Yeah. Yeah, those are all good answers. I mean, those are some of the top guys. I think, and all of them are a slip up away or a fine tune away from really pushing Camby for anything. I think he has right now. Camby has more competition at his level than I think any prior world champions had. The next crop. I think it's kind of ridiculous how many people are that good coming after him.
Like Brian Shaw says, it's super exciting. So you mentioned a little bit about it, but what does the future hold for you, Zach? You talked a little bit about this current program that you're on, but what does the future hold?
Well, I'm just doing some training right now, like physically lifting, getting my body kind of tuned in. I'm going to push my body a little bit harder on this training cycle than I have in the past. If my body does start to break down a little bit, I think I'm going to ease off and give my body an additional training cycle to adapt to that kind of stimulus and see what happens. Because when I went back to event training, I mean, 280 farmers was light. I felt so solid in my hands. I only did a 630 yoke, but it felt pretty good. It felt a little shaky, but that's one of those events that for me, my ability to wield the weight is diminished with time. And I haven't done that event for possibly years at this point. But when I train it consistently, I can make 50 or even 100-pound jumps between training sessions. So 640 or whatever I was doing is actually a really good training, like a really good starting point. Next week, I could probably do 750 faster. It's just the way my body adjusts. Well, all that to say, I guess what I'm getting at is my body feels really good.
A lot of times our stuff is a little bit lighter because we do a lot faster base and medley base too. So I mean, you're not going to be you shouldn't be doing 900-pound yokes in Clash just because that's not the way our sport is. That's not the way the sport of Clash is run.
Yeah,
because it's a different sport.
It's a different sport. I'm going to say it. I'm going to keep saying it.
Well, that was something that I noticed when I was there, and I don't mean to get away from I apologize for getting off topic, but Clash was extremely interesting to me because it is absolutely a different sport. And I feel like that's something that I mentioned to Anthony afterward was that was ran so fast and so smooth. It was like a giant strength exhibition mixed with strongman.
Yeah.
It wasn't like it wasn't anything that I was used to seeing, but it alleviated all of what, in my opinion, were the weaknesses of strongman, which is the people at the event usually had to wait a while. And with this one, it was just like action, like constant constant action. It was awesome. Like, it was awesome to watch from a spectator standpoint. And I think that kind of increase in palatability is going to increase the opportunity for the sport. And so what's next for me? Getting back to the question, what's next for me? That's got, what I mentioned has got me excited. Clash has got me very excited. And if I can be an elite level athlete, then I would love to do that. And if I can't, then I would like to be a mentor for up and coming athletes. I would like to be someone who can help others with their strategy in events or their technique, which is what I really love to do. And what I'm really damn good at is breaking down technical lifts and breaking down the technique of strongman events, and then telling people how to adjust for their body type, telling people how to perform more effectively, telling people how to be efficient in those movements. But where am I going to land? I don't honestly know. Elite athlete, coach, trainer, mentor, technical analyst, whatever it is, I want to be part of it, because it feels damn good to be back to the community, and the people are just as cool as ever. And it's got a very bright future, and I'm excited to be a part of it. So
maybe in the future there's a TV screen, they pan to Zack McCarley, and you got your little markers like, well, here you see the footwork, and he's pointing in the circles. And
oh my God,
I was literally just thinking that. Listen, we'll talk, Zach, but I think we can do that. I think we could bring you in a broadcast booth and do it just like they do the fucking NFL.
Dude, I would love that. I'd be like, okay, so you can see his stone loading is clearly a little bit out front of the body center. He's not rolling it up the body appropriately.
He hasn't the ability to draw. The draw.
Yeah, the X's and O's. Yeah. You have to draw over it, circle, like Madden used to do. He's going right here, and boom, he got the Atlas stone up.
All right.
So eventually I just break down to well, you see what he needs to do here is load the stone more than the other person.
Yeah, the more long you do it, the more morose you get. Yeah. I don't care.
All right. So my last big question. Predictions for World Strongest Man for the heavyweights. You got any favorites?
Do we know the events yet?
In the finals, there's like a knack deadlift, which is pretty much a regular deadlift with these weird boxes. They're like work boxes, but that's the sponsor. You have the behind the back press. You're going to have an Atlas stone run, which is from a distance. And then Anthony, help me up for the rest.
Yeah, hold on. I'm looking them up real quick. All right. So there's going to be a loading medley. I don't have these broken up by heats or anything, unfortunately. Well, actually, I think I do. There's a loading medley, a deadlift ladder, a car walk, a hold event. I think they're doing the front hold again, and then a log press for reps. And I think that's the heats. And then stone off for the final for that. And then the finals are the knack medley. So you got to carry a knack box. It's like a big like toolbox over the yoke, I think, or just I don't know, somewhere. And then you yoke back. Deadlift for reps. The Flintstone lift. It could be a push press, push jerk, front or behind the neck. Truck pull, power stairs, Atlas stones. So pretty, I mean, there's nothing too crazy, I would say. Like the behind the neck thing is like a little bit of a wild card, but they're all pretty traditional events.
So Zack McCarley, where are your picks?
I think I don't know if anybody has been paying enough attention to Maxime, but he's going to be in the mix, in my opinion.
The only thing in the finals, there's deadlift for reps.
I was going to say the deadlift, the static is the only thing that holds him back. And obviously it depends on what the preliminary lifts are, you know what I mean, to get in, because you have to do well in that. And if there's a heavy deadlift in that, then I think Novikov and Maxime and is the Polish guy healthy right now?
No,
he's not competing.
No. Okay, he's not competing. Yeah, I feel like and then Martins, I think those, but probably in order. I think Novikov, Martins, and
are you just saying Martins because you guys have a similar beard and hairstyle?
Somebody, well, actually it was Pete Markov that pointed out Martins to me a couple years ago, and he's like, like he looks like a heavyweight version of you, and he like moves very similar to you. And I was like, thank you for getting that right, Pete.
Hey, Zack McCarley beat Martins in competition.
Like him. Huh?
You beat him in competition before. Denison.
I did.
He was a 265 pounder at Denison, Texas.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, I mean, how the tables have turned.
If you ever look, if you guys,
I'll tell you, Martins is. I think he's going to win this year. He's looking dangerous.
He looks really good.
Yeah.
I think like I said, I think it's going to be between Novikov and Martins, with Maxime impressing a lot of people.
Evans. There's so many. It's ridiculous.
My dark
I haven't
horse.
seen enough of Evan. I haven't seen enough of his lifting to really evaluate it very fairly.
My darkest horse out of all of them is, I think Adam Bishop is going to have his best year that he's had at World's Strongest Man. I think he's coming in with the most confidence. He dyed his hair. He's ready. So you don't dye your hair.
It's a kind of he's throwing everything he has at this one. That's what I feel. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so the Bishop is my dark horse. So if you guys haven't already, you can follow Zack on YouTube. He has an extensive channel that has a lot lot
I recommend you follow Zack on YouTube.
You can follow him on Instagram. And where else can people find you?
LinkedIn.
I mean, like I'm on Facebook, but very seldom. But like, I'm going to be a little bit more active on Instagram from here on out, I think. And when I get a couple things in order, and when everything on my end kind of slows down, because there's a lot of moving parts in my life right now, but when everything kind of slows down a little bit, I will be continuing the Basics of Strongman series, which is a series on my YouTube channel where I speak about the very basics of getting into Strongman. So you can think of it like an introductory to Strongman course. And then my personal favorite, the Strongman theory course, which is where I talk about getting better at the skill of competition in Strongman. So if someone wants to be competitive in the sport of Strongman, that's where I bring up basically everything that you'll need to know. And eventually I really want to, be working with other individuals to bring additional content forward. But we'll see what happens with that. Currently I have in the 20s of episodes scripted, and I think I have 9 episodes or 8 episodes of each released right now. So it's just a matter of getting a whiteboard, getting a pen, like hunkering down and filming them, and then posting them, because I film them in one go. I don't like the jump cuts. Like I like the natural feel of hey, like you and me are speaking directly for 10 to 15 minutes, and these are my thoughts.
Yeah.
On this.
Yep. I love it, man. I love the theory that there's a skill to competing. You can be as strong as you want, but you have to apply that strength to a skill. So,
yeah, I think it needs to be said. Yeah. I was never, ever the strongest 231 in America. I was the best at showing up and competing.
Yeah. There's something to be said for that, for real. That's a whole different thing. Yeah. But, all right.
Zack, you got the last words. And of course, all the links are going to be at the bottom of course, in the description. So that's where you got to find Zack and his other links. But you got the last words. How do you want to finish this podcast?
I want to thank you guys for inviting me on. I'm really excited to be back into the community and back a part of the community in a time where it is so broadly known and people are excited about the sport again. And people are excited about the 231s, because I've always felt that was like this magical weight where strength and athleticism combined. And these are the most impressive athletes in the world, in my opinion, as far as strength sports are concerned. And I'd said that for so long, and it felt like very few people ever listened, until I show up to heavyweight contests and I'm like 1 point off from getting a pro card at 230. And it's like, I'm very grateful to be back. And, I'm very grateful to be able to share information that I've acquired across the last 16 years on my YouTube channel and like get that out there for people. I feel like I had so many advantages that it's my duty to give that information to people so they can have those advantages as well, because I feel like that's the only way that I can pay it back in any way, shape, or form. The people that I was fortunate enough to meet and the people that mentored me, Grant Higa and that whole crew, they didn't expect anything out of me. They wanted to share their passion. And that's what I'm about right now, is sharing that passion with other people who want to help themselves. If you want to help yourself, then know that you have at least one person right here that wants to help you too. Okay. So you're not alone in that.
Hell of a man, Zach. I'm a fan, and I think I could speak for everybody. We're happy to have you back, man.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
But really, but you can also get payback. Casey Garrison is competing in a 105 kilo competition. So if you want payback for Denison, Texas, for losing for 1 point, you know where to find them.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, man. Okay, if I come back on, we'll tell that story. All right.
Yep. Yeah.
Hell yeah. But until next time, guys, stay strong.